Well, more questions have been raised about an increase in killings in KwaZulu-Natal after 14 people were shot in two separate incidents last week. On Friday, 10 members of the same family were killed in Pietermaritzburg, while 4 others were gunned down in KwaMashu a day earlier. Criminal expert Ian Allis joins us to talk more about this. Ian, a very good evening to you. Grateful for your time. Tragic as this is, am I right to say that it's not an entirely unique set of occurrences?
Evening to Bikini, good evening to the viewers. Unfortunately, this is becoming the norm rather than the exception. It's almost too difficult to believe, but one could only say we're living through a modern-day horror story. That's the closest. It's like one of those bad horror movies, like The Purge, come to reality.
And in KwaZulu-Natal, I was looking earlier, when you look at the crime stats, the last reporting period, in that province, I think murder was up about 8.3%. And now that we're seeing all of this happen, it's been interesting to note as well that the shootings in KwaZulu-Natal are happening in all sets of society, urban areas, i.e. the suburbs, townships, and in rural communities. So where are people safe?
The problem that also one can see is that the pattern is, as you've just said, the pattern is shifting, which has not been the case previously. At the best of times, there was always, in KwaZulu and KZN, higher risks from semi-violent crimes. And when I say that, I'm talking about things such as muggings, robberies, that type of thing. But it was never as excessive from your day-to-day murder as what's now happening. There's been traditionally a lot of violence even from rival factions, but it's now escalating to the point where no one is safe. From what has actually happened and looking and reading through those articles, they're completely motiveless murders. And they're just on the rise, and it's going to become more and more prolific from what's actually happening, and nobody's actually been able to stop it. That's where the bigger problem comes.
And let's talk about stopping it, because it's one thing for the police minister, police commissioner to rush to an area, as we've seen in the last few days when such a horrific crime has been committed. But in order for fewer families to mourn or have to grieve such a violent loss, what's key would be prevention. Is that even possible when you consider that people are being gunned down in their cars, people are being killed in their homes while they are sitting with family or sleeping?
The problem that's now happened is that normally you profile certain patterns. What's happened now is that no one is safe. So there's no distinct and similar pattern, because it's almost becoming harder and harder to anticipate what the next move is going to be. Because you're looking at from the poorest of the poor to the richest, unless as people we can have massive security barriers, which even those are proving to be quite penetrable, depending upon the motives of your criminals, is the only way that one is in actual fact going to be able to look at stopping this is perhaps with slight additions to the police force, which is easier said than done, and more community-based security and patrolling, just to try and see if it acts as a deterrent. But the problem also comes that you've got these guys walking into houses carrying heavy artillery. This is where maybe a pattern can be looked at, is where are they getting this artillery from, and try and stop it at that point and anticipate more where they're going to get the guns from, more than where they're going to go ahead and use it. So try and block off that channel, if one could say, of demand and of supply.
That comes to my next point then, the issue of the number of weapons in circulation in this country. There's been a firearms amnesty for years now. It's meant to help us feel safer, but it doesn't seem to be doing that. Why aren't we seeing fewer guns, whether legal or illegal, in circulation? And why is it that those who have them are now using them in this way?
I'll tell you something. This has been the biggest problem, and unfortunately, well, what must understand with the whole firearms control issue, has been it's taking legally held firearms out of the hands of people who are qualified to use them and placing them in an open parameter where where there's access. The biggest supplies of a lot of firearms have been theft from the police stations. So these are firearms that have in actual fact been procured illegally. You're not going to, by having higher controlled firearms for legal people, going to control the firearms of the illegal people. That's where I think there's a grave misconception that's in actual fact taken place. Mm-hmm. And that is...
Finish your point, Ian, pardon me.
We got to be careful about that. It's not incorrect with trying to regulate more the circulation, but the problem is with gun law amnesty, you're taking legal firearms from legal holders who are trained and placing them often with the police and gunsmiths, which are also susceptible to robbery, and that's how they get into the system. If not through other means as well, through theft from army bases, as well as the other police corruption as well, and other arms corruption.
Quick final question. How big of a problem are the power cuts going to be as far as safety and security in South African communities? I think this week alone we've covered here on Newzroom Africa 2 big attacks where load shedding has been blamed as a source or a contributing factor. Even in KZN, in the one incident where the family of 10 was killed at their homestead, community members said it was under the cover of darkness. There wasn't the power cuts were in effect and people could just hear shots. And even if you want to help police identify a criminal or to help save a life, you too are afraid because it's so dark.
It's impossible. The load shedding itself, just from if one looks at the statistics on the rise in crime, as the load shedding has gotten worse, so is that, because it disables your security. Even if you look at it from the aspect of those who are properly secured, it disables your electric fence, it disables your panic button to your armed security forces, and this is just at the level of the regular suburbs. When you've got that where it's a gated community and there's no security, but at least you have lights, and at least maybe you could see somebody coming. Nothing. Communities can't then even patrol and police their own suburbs because you never see these guys coming. They've got the equipment, they've got the arms. How are you going to know if you just see a vehicle randomly at 3 o'clock in the morning? And what do you expect the person to do? Because also cellular telephones don't work properly because of limitations on signal and the batteries being stolen. The load shedding is going to, what they don't kill us in one way, they're killing us in another.
Ian Allis, good to speak to you, criminal expert. Thank you for your time.